The late afternoon sun filtered through the ancient, sprawling oak trees lining the manicured grounds of the Willow Creek Manor, cast long, dappled shadows across the perfectly coived lawn. Golden light glinted off champagne flutes, and the delicate silverware laid out with military precision on rows of long linen-draped tables. The air hummed with a carefully curated symphony of contentment. The low murmur of well-dressed guests, the soft clinking of glasses, the distant, elegant strains of string quartets shifting from Pachelbel to something tastefully jazzy. It was, by every conceivable measure, the picture of a perfect wedding day. My younger brother, Ben, beamed with an almost incandescent joy, his arm possessively around his radiant new wife, Clara. Her laughter, bright and clear, carried across the terrace, a sound that seemed to encapsulate the day's effortless happiness. Everyone agreed it was flawless. I stood near the edge of the terrace, leaning against a stone balustrade warmed by the sun, nursing a glass of excellent single malt. My own wife, Sarah, was beside me, her hand resting lightly on my forearm. She looked stunning in a deep emerald gown that caught the light and complemented her auburn hair, swept up in an intricate style that left her neck bare. Her smile had been serene all day, mirroring the collective mood. We danced earlier, laughed with old friends, toasted Ben and Clara with genuine warmth. Watching my little brother step into this new chapter filled me with profound, almost paternal pride. He'd navigated past heartbreaks and career uncertainties, and now, here he was, glowing with certainty beside Clara. Life felt ordered, benevolent. The anxieties of work, the minor stresses of home ownership, the relentless tick of the clock, they all receded, muffled by the sheer perfection of the moment. This was what happiness looked like, smelled like, sounded like. Sarah shifted slightly beside me. It was a minute movement, hardly noticeable amidst the gentle sway of the crowd. Her fingers, which had been warm and relaxed moments before, tightened on my arm, not affectionately, but with a sudden, unexpected pressure that felt more like a reflex, a desperate anchor. I glanced down at her hand, then up at her face, expecting to share a quiet joke or comment on the scene before us. The transformation was jarring. The serene smile was gone, erased as if wiped away by an unseen hand. Her skin, normally touched with a healthy flush, had paled to an alarming, waxy gray. A fine sheen of sweat glistened at her temples and along her hairline, stark against a sudden pallor. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, weren't focused on a laughing couple or the picturesque scene. They stared straight ahead, but inward, fixed on some internal horror invisible to everyone else. Her pupils were dilated, swallowing familiar hazel almost completely, leaving only thin rings of color. The lines around her mouth, usually expressive in laughter or thought, were now deep grooves of tension, pulled taut. She looked less like the vibrant woman I knew and more like a statue carved from cold marble, struck by a sudden, paralyzing chill. Before I could form a question, before the instinctive "Are you okay?" could leave my lips, she turned her head towards me. The movement was stiff, unnatural. Her lips parted, barely moving, yet her voice, when it came, cut through the ambient noise with the chilling precision of a scalpel. It wasn't loud, but it carried a terrifying urgency, a raw vibration of pure, unadulterated fear that bypassed my ears and went straight to my primal brainstem. "We have to leave. Now!" The words hung in the perfumed air, absurdly incongruous against the backdrop of violins and laughter. They were a discordant shriek in a symphony of harmony. The warmth of the sun on my skin instantly transformed into a prickling cold sweat. The taste of the expensive whiskey turned to ash in my mouth. The perfect tableau of the wedding shattered, replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of Sarah's face and the absolute command in her whisper. This wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion born of a headache or fatigue. It was a desperate imperative, a line drawn in sand this perfect day by sheer, unmitigated terror. My mind, sluggish with surprise and the lingering effects of celebratory alcohol, scrambled for purchase. What? Why? What's happening? Is she ill? Did she see something? 1,000 questions erupted, colliding in a chaotic mess, but none surfaced. Her eyes held mine, pleading, demanding immediate, unquestioning action. The sheer force of her fear brooked no hesitation. A wave of nausea washed over me, unrelated to the alcohol. The carefully constructed perfection of Ben's wedding imploded. The string quartet sounded tinny and distant. The laughter of guests grated like broken glass. All I could see was a desperate plea in Sarah's eyes, the unnatural pallor of her skin, the tremor I could now feel running through her body where her hand gripped my arm like a vice. Leaving was unthinkable. Ben would be devastated. Clara's family would be mortally offended. The whispers would start before we even reached the car park. It would cast a shadow over their day, a permanent smudge on the memory. The guilt at the thought of abandoning my brother at this pinnacle moment was a physical weight pressing on my chest. But the terror radiating from Sarah was an even greater force, primal and undeniable. This wasn't about social awkwardness. This felt existential. I forced myself to move. My limbs felt leaden, disconnected. I placed my half-full whiskey glass blindly on the balustrade, the crystal clinking softly against the stone. With my other hand, I covered Sarah's icy fingers where they dug into my arm, trying to offer some semblance of stability, though I felt anything but stable. My smile felt like a grotesque rictus plastered on my face as I scanned the immediate vicinity for a path of least resistance. How do you extract yourself seamlessly from the heart of a celebration when your world has just tilted on its axis? My parents were chatting animatedly with Clara's and a few feet away. Ben was twirling Clara gently on the makeshift dance floor under the twinkling lights. Every face seemed turned towards us, though logically I knew they weren't. Paranoia, fueled by panic, tightened its grip. "Excuse us," I murmured, aiming the words vaguely toward my parents, my voice sounding unnaturally high and thin. "Sarah's feeling a bit faint. Need some air." It was a flimsy excuse, barely concealing the earthquake happening beneath the surface. My mother's face immediately creased with concern, taking a step towards us. "Oh, dear, do you need—" "No." Sarah's voice was a strangled gasp, cutting her off. The single word, sharp and laced with that same desperate terror, silenced my mother mid-sentence. Sarah's grip on my arm tightened impossibly further, her nails digging through the fabric of my suit jacket. She started moving, pulling me with her, not toward the open lawn for air, but purposefully, almost blindly, toward the side entrance of the grand manor house, the one leading towards the car park. Her steps were quick, stiff-legged, like a marionette jerked on its strings. She walked with terrifying focus, her gaze fixed straight ahead, avoiding eye contact with anyone, radiating an aura of do not approach. I stumbled slightly, caught off guard by the sudden propulsion. I offered apologetic grimaces over my shoulder, to my bewildered parents, to a cousin who raised an inquisitive eyebrow. "Just air. Be back shortly." I lied again, the words tasting sour. The festive sounds of the reception faded rapidly as we passed through the heavy oak door into the cool, dimly lit corridor of the manor. The transition was jarring. One moment, golden light, laughter music. The next, hushed silence, polished paneling, the faint smell of beeswax and antiquity. The sudden quiet amplified the frantic drumming of my own heart and the harsh, shallow gasps escaping Sarah's lips. She didn't slow down. If anything, her pace increased, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm of panic on the marble floor as we navigated the corridor toward the exit sign glowing faintly ahead. "Sarah, please." I managed, my voice low and urgent, trying to match her stride. "What is it? What's wrong? Are you hurt?" My mind raced through horrific possibilities. A sudden illness, a heart attack, a stroke? Had she witnessed something unspeakable? Had she received a phone call? Her purse was clutched tightly in her other hand. I hadn't seen her check it. The sheer lack of information was torture. She shook her head violently, a sharp, negating motion. "Not here," she hissed, her voice strained and breathless. "Car. Now!" She pushed open the heavy fire door, leading to the rear car park with surprising force. The bright afternoon light assaulted us again, momentarily blinding after the dim interior. The car park was mostly empty, save for the staff vehicles and a few belonging to the band or early departing elderly relatives. Our car, a sensible silver sedan, sat parked under a large sycamore tree about 50 yards away. It looked impossibly distant, Sarah broke into a near run, pulling me along. Her breath came in ragged gasps now, mingling with suppressed sobs. The fear was a palpable cloud around her, thick and choking. Seeing her run, this woman of composure and quiet strength, reduced to this terrified flight, ignited a fresh wave of panic within me. This was bad. This was very, very bad. We reached the car. Sarah fumbled frantically in her clutch purse, her hands shaking so violently she dropped her keys onto the asphalt with metallic clatter. I bent down swiftly, scooping them up. My own hands weren't much steadier. I unlocked the passenger door first, opening it for her. She practically fell into the seat, her body collapsing in on itself, trembling uncontrollably. She hugged her arms around her torso, rocking slightly, her eyes squeezed shut, tears now leaking from beneath her lashes, carving tracks through her meticulously applied makeup. The sight was utterly devastating. I slammed her door shut and ran around the driver's side, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Starting the car felt like a monumental task. The engine roared to life, an obscenely loud sound in the sudden silence of the car park. As I threw the car into reverse, my eyes flicked automatically back towards the grand facade of Willow Creek Manor. Through the tall windows of the banquet hall, I could still see the silhouettes of the guests, the swirl of dancers, the warm glow of celebration. Ben and Clara were probably cutting the cake right about now, surrounded by cheers and flashing cameras. The image was a knife twisting in my gut. We were fleeing my brother's perfect day. The guilt surged, hot and acidic. What kind of brother was I? What kind of husband was I, to not even know what had caused this cataclysm? I backed out of the space with a jerk, tires crunching on the gravel. Okay, we're in the car, I said, my voice tight with the effort of keeping it level. I pulled onto the narrow service road, leading away from the manor. We're safe. Please, Sarah, talk to me. What happened? Are you sick? Did someone do something? I reached across, placing a tentative hand on her knee. She flinched violently, shrinking away from my touch, pressing herself against the passenger door. Her eyes flew open, wide and wild, staring straight ahead to the windshield, seeing nothing of the sun-dappled lane. It's Dad, she choked out, the words barely audible over the hum of the engine and her own ragged breathing. A fresh sob racked her body. My dad. My blood ran cold. Sarah's father, Robert, a robust man in his late 60s, fiercely independent, a retired engineer with a passion for woodworking and sailing. We'd seen him just last weekend for a barbecue. He'd been grumbling good-naturedly about the neighbor's cat and showing off his latest bookshelf project. He lived alone since Sarah's mother passed 5 years ago, about a 40-minute drive from the wedding venue in the opposite direction of our own home. What about him? I asked, dread coiling in my stomach like a cold serpent. Is he okay? Sarah shook her head, a frantic, hopeless movement. Tears streamed down her face unchecked. Mom called. She took a shuddering breath, trying to control her voice. Just before I stepped outside to the restroom, signal was better. She gulped air. She said, Dad collapsed in the garage. He was working on the boat engine. She heard a crash, went out. Sarah covered her face with her hands, her shoulders heaving. Oh, God. She said he wasn't responding right, his face, his words, all slurred. She called 999, ambulance is coming, but her voice dissolved into incoherent sobs. She was so scared. She was trying to be calm, but I could hear it. The terror. She kept saying, hurry, Sarah, please hurry. I don't think he knows me. The pieces slammed into place with brutal clarity. The whispered urgency, the pallor, the abject terror. It wasn't about us. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about her father, potentially suffering a stroke or a heart attack, miles away, with only her terrified mother waiting for the ambulance. The world outside the car windows blurred. The picturesque countryside became a meaningless smear of color. The weight of abandoning Ben's wedding was instantly dwarfed by the crushing gravity of this new, horrifying reality. Robert, strong, capable Robert, collapsed not responding, face drooping, words slurred. Classic stroke symptoms hammered into my consciousness from countless public health announcements. The selfish guilt over leaving the wedding evaporated, replaced by a different, sharper guilt. The guilt of not knowing, of being oblivious while Sarah received that horrific call, of dismissing her initial tension. How long had she held it together? How long had she stood beside me, smiling, while her world fractured? The thought was unbearable. "Okay," I said, my voice suddenly firmer, cutting through her sobs. I pressed my foot harder on the accelerator. The sensible sedan surged forward. "We're going. Right now. Which hospital are they taking him to?" My mind shifted into crisis mode, shoving aside the emotional maelstrom. Action was required. Navigation. Speed. Information. Sarah fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with tears. She unlocked it with trembling hands, scrolling frantically through recent calls. "ST. St. Catherine's," she stammered, finding the number. Mum said, "St. Catherine's, yar." Her voice was small, broken. I knew St. Catherine's. It was a large teaching hospital near their neighborhood. I activated the car's GPS, punching in the address with fingers that felt thick and clumsy. The estimated arrival time flashed on the screen. 38 minutes. 38 endless minutes. Every second stretched into an eternity, filled with the sound of Sarah's muffled crying and the frantic, useless whirring of my own thoughts. Please let the ambulance be fast. Please let it be something minor. Please let him be conscious. Please let him know, Mom. The litany repeated in my head, a desperate prayer against the image of Robert lying motionless on his garage floor. The wedding felt like a lifetime ago, a gaudy, irrelevant dream. The perfection was a cruel illusion, shattered by a single phone call and a terrified whisper. The drive was a nightmare tunnel. I focused on the road, pushing the car as fast as I dared on the winding country lanes before hitting the main highway. Sarah alternated between silent, tearful trembling and frantic attempts to call her mother, the phone ringing out again and again, each unanswered call amplifying the dread. Had the ambulance arrived? Was he stable? Was it worse? The not knowing was its own special kind of torture. The manicured lawns of Willow Creek, the string quartet, the taste of single malt, Ben's beaming face. They all faded into insignificance, replaced by the sterile, fluorescent-lit image of an emergency room entrance, the frantic hope that we wouldn't be too late, and the terrifying, echoing silence of Sarah's phone refusing to connect. The perfect wedding was over. The real world, harsh and uncertain, had crashed in with the force of a collapsing wave, and all we could do now was race against time, hoping against hope that we wouldn't arrive only to face an unthinkable loss. The only thing that mattered now was reaching St. Catherine's, and the fragile thread of life hanging by a moment in a suburban garage miles away. The perfection had been a facade, and the whispered words, "We have to leave now," were the stark, terrifying